We're live.
Live. We made it.
We did finally. Yay for us. Oh man, that was exciting, wasn't it?
It was tough. Always technical issues, but there you go. We're here. And hello, everybody.
Hello. Be interesting to see if anyone joins us tonight, because I'm sure they're all waiting for the American politics situation at the moment. I'm sure they're all like tied into CNN right now just to see what's going on.
We can watch both at the same time. So
maybe I am.
Yeah. Get too excited. Anyway, lots to get on with. So hello and welcome everybody. We're part of our series talking about different rums in the UK, all from our Rum of the Year competition. So we did Botanical Rum before, we looked at the winners, and now we're going to look a bit closer at unaged rum, which was one of the categories that we've got today.
Fantastic. And why not? This is, I think this is actually kind of like the most important part of anyone who's making rum, obviously, because if it doesn't taste good off the still, it's going to get a lot more difficult from there on in, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think even when we've been talking before about some of the aged products and things like that, if you don't have that right balance to start with, where's it going to go? And also for an aged product, you don't want it just to be about the wood. You need to have it as combination of the rum characteristic and the wood as well. And I think probably it's worth, before we even start, saying that there is definitely a challenge to making it in the UK in comparison to making it elsewhere. Mostly to do with the climate, and it's not just about the temperatures for things like fermentation and stuff, but also the fact that there are no great fields of cane growing in Croydon or Suffolk or somewhere like that. So the choices that you have for your base material are different, and that has its own impacts as well. So
very much so. So I mean, the vast majority of what we got this evening, on my notes, make it look like I know what I'm doing. Molasses. We have got a little one there with sample reference number 17, which we won't name right at this moment, but there's a little thing there to be discussed, I think. But for sure. So yeah, so cool. So while we were sort of chatting in the back room, we poured ourselves a rum to start with, didn't we? Just in case.
We did. So this is what we're kicking off with. So this is from Scotland, and it's the Verdant Light rum. There you go. Get a better look at that. There we go. 43%. And this is one that is a combination of pot and column distillation. Pete, do you want to just briefly go over about why you would bother having two different profiles?
This is a thing that kind of goes back to historically in rum category spirits judging, it just kind of gets broken down to white, gold, and dark, and then flavoured. And that's bollocks. Really, I mean, I'm sorry, that was technically. We need a little bit more than that. I mean, categorization by color is not very good. I mean, if it is unaged and it's see-through, it's kind of a bit tricky to call it anything other than like white or silver or whatever you want to call it. But it still doesn't really tell you what it is. Most important part, I think, of rum moving forward is to have a better, more grown-up conversation about it and how you describe it. How we understand it. So Gargano classification is something that I've been advocating for a while now. It's pretty much every spirit comp that I'm involved with kind of has something along those lines. It's kind of broken down that way. So Gargano is basically about how it's distilled. So in a nutshell, what it's made from is the key thing. So it's either from sugarcane juice or molasses. Could be a syrup, but invariably it's one or the others. And then if it's fermentation is important, but it's not necessarily a categorizer, because you wouldn't necessarily have a long fermentation and then run it through a highly efficient column still to strip all the flavour out. That would be a waste of everyone's time and effort. So normally fermentation sort of follows the method of distillation. So it's either going to be a batch or a continuous state distillation. So when we talk about column distillation, we're normally talking about a continual stabilized state. So as long as the inputs keep going in and stay consistent, the alcohol being drawn from the system is consistent. And it tends, invariably, not always, to be a lighter, more characterful spirit. Good evening, Gail, David, and so everyone's coming in tonight. So so the idea of pot still being that like has all the capability of being a much heavier, more characterful spirit, but it's a batch spirit. It's whether the output varies with time. Continuous column is continuous. It's certain consistent in its output. But lots of rums on the market are blends of both. A little bit of pot still goes a long way in that lighter column base invariably. So having a it's important. Like if you were comparing a light multi-column rum from Puerto Rico, for example, against a heavy pot still rum from Jamaica, they're poles apart. The only thing that's the same potentially is the color. But they're not to be compared. So we've got to find a way of making a comparison to allow people, that's what a categorization is. It allows people to compare things within a style. So for us, it's really important to kind of break down how it's made. Most of the rum here in the UK, of course, is pot still.
Yeah.
Yes, a little bit of column still. Now, I have to say, in terms of the exact setup of the column still at Verdant, I have to assume that it is one of these sort of continuous state ones rather than.
Andrew's just joined us, so hello, Andrew. So if you can tell us in the comments,
Andrew,
that would be great.
We'll leave a question for you. Maybe if you could just describe in the comment section how your column still is set up, whether it's how it's is it a continuous state output, or is it just like a little bit of bolt on or something, or what? I'll let you can fill in the details on that one. But I think the idea with a lot of the hot column blends is, of course, that it's a nice way of adding complexity because you've got different weights of spirit. So you haven't got a consistent spirit, you have another part to it, and that adds depth. We also change the economics of it as well.
Well, yeah, that's an important part. That yes, everyone, and I think this is what we've been talking about a lot with a lot of these British producers is they're all wanting to make quality products, and I think most of them are doing really, really well at doing that. But hey, it's a business, and if they don't make any money, then they can't keep making rum, and you can't keep enjoying it. So that's the honesty, isn't it?
That's the truth, and I think this is it. Bimba made a fantastic spirit, but they've decided they're not going to press ahead with it. Uses a packed column in column mode. There you go. So it's going to make a much lighter, more highly rectified spirit in that setup. So, hello, Liz. Wow, everyone's joining us. It's either maybe they are fed up with American politics. Maybe that's why they're all coming piling in.
I don't think the final vote's come in yet, Pete. I think you got a little bit of time. So.
Is that what it is? Okay.
I believe so.
I've seen that. It's and it's not just because Andrew's on there. Hi, Andrew, by the way. But actually, it's actually drinking rather well. What was it? Is it 40? What's the ABV on that? 43. It's good ABV.
I think, yeah.
Very nice.
We get a nice complexity on the nose for sure,
but then there's more to that as well, because you say with this one there's that little tiny modicum of aged spirit within it as well.
And I think that's probably something that this is time to sort of also talk about that, which is there are different approaches to making these sorts of products. It's a small portion and it's not a huge influence, but it just kind of, as Andrew just said, it adds a little bit of touch of refinement. But by and large, it's drinking in the similar way that these other ones would, and that's why it makes sense to have it with the others as well. You would use it in that way that you would use an unaged rum, I think.
Is it worth saying, I think, in terms of the way that like white, air quote marks, is described, we're talking about unaged rums.
Yeah.
We don't have the luxury here in the UK of having an aged rum that's then been colour filtered, as might have been from other parts. Well, there are a few brands out there that, Bacardi Carta Blanca, famously, 12 to 18 months old and then colour filtered back to clear. Now, we don't have that situation here. So if we're talking about a white rum, we're talking about an unaged product. And even if it has got a touch of age in it, it doesn't matter. Minimum age is the youngest spirit in the blend defines the age. So
yeah, and I think, as with many things, it's about the utility of it as well. How would you drink it, and that kind of approach. And I think, but also what's nice about this is there's a lovely texture as well as the other thing that I'm getting. So
yeah, no, nice little sweetness, nice little texture.
It's quite simple.
Is it actually commercially available? It feels like, I don't know whether I'm asking you that one or Andrew that one for that matter.
I believe it was launched in December, if I remember correctly. So it was just in time for Rum of the Year.
I promised myself this evening I wouldn't just swig all the samples that are in front of me. I can see that's already going pear-shaped. So on that bombshell, for sure. It's really rather nice, that one, actually. We need to get Andrew. Andrew, feel free to add a link if you have got it for sale into the comment section. We won't be upset by that.
Yeah, definitely one worth seeking out. A little slightly different approach as well. So then let's move on to. Do you have a preference which one we go to next?
No. So
okay, we'll go on to. Let's do this. The Morvina. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. Yeah. This is from the Cornish Distilling Company.
Yeah, this one's fantastic. I do hope that we get. Hope Tom actually comes on or listens to this at some point, because I just need to say this so we can actually hear it. But I have to say, before anything that relates to Cornish Distilling, I will say that if I rewound a few years here in the UK, I've said this before, I might have said this when we're chatting here, a lot of white rum in the UK was very consistently the same. It almost kind of felt like lots of people went to the same distilling class, bought the same yeast, bought the same molasses from Tate and Lyle, have got within a bit the same sort of pot stills and things like that. And so there was a very samey kind of vibe to things. The first time I went down to Cornish Distillers, Tom, I think by his own stance, was making a fairly clean spirit, because he was perhaps maybe lacking confidence to put something more characterful out on the market. And so this last week we were sort of chatting, and he said, "Oh, you've tried my new white." Well, I entered into the competition. I go, "Oh, hang on a minute." Well, I didn't, because I didn't know when we had the samples, because judging blind. But of course, we all subsequently have got your crib sheet to go back. Number 22. Let's have a go. This doesn't taste anything like the way it was. There is a significant sea change upwards in terms of character on this one. I can't recognize it in terms of it's so very different to where it was.
I think just from speaking to a number of different distillers, that is definitely something that I've heard from various different people, which is like, this is how we started, and then like things have really, really improved, and I think that's really exciting. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to talk to someone and sort of say, like, what have you done? It's just fantastic. Like,
I'm not saying it was shit before,
but it's kind of like, yeah, you're just like, how do you've got to put it in the right way. I mean, it's true of any spirit, I think, and definitely true with gin and other things. Like those, once you get to like the fourth, the fifth batches, that learning curve, you just learn so much more with what's going on. But this is great. It shows the variety in the range that we've got here. A bit like when we're doing the botanicals, there's so much variety going on.
I think Tom uses quite a large. Well, I mean, they've got quite a setup down there. Actually, they've got quite a large amount of investment. They've got, I think it's like a 2,000 litre ice still they've got down there at the moment. Quite serious capacity. In fact, when I first visited them, they were running off their little one, which I think was 50 or 100 or something like that. Or, it was a small still. Moved to a purpose-built now distilling facility on the same site, much bigger, huge fermentation capacity. I mean, like ridiculously big. Someone behind it said, like, no, if we're going to get into this, we're going to get into it to the point where I think these guys could easily offer like contract distilling for other folks as well. They've got more than enough capacity. I mean, I think their biggest challenge now, Tom's biggest challenge, is to get a mark that he's happy with and get it into cask and build up a stock of serious aged rum.
Because there's a very, very gentle kind of, it's a slight grassy smokiness. It's kind of a little bit of what I'm getting on the nose.
I was going to say there's definitely a heavier rum in this. It's either that broader cut or something else is coming through, and it does feel like something that you could lay down. I'm not saying that it wouldn't work in mixed drinks. It certainly would. I don't think there's many people that are aiming to make a white rum commercially that people are just going to drink neat. I don't think that's the idea. Standing up in a mixed drink is probably the one. And I think I've got a tonic. Look,
he's ready. He's got his tonic ready.
I'm a little bit more. Yeah, I'm a little more secured. So there we go. Watch that.
Yeah.
Put a splash in.
And there's a slight butteriness, I think, on the palate, and a little bit of fruitiness as well.
The ice stills. You know what? I mean, I'm going to say it. I don't think the ice stills are particularly pretty. I don't think they're going to win any awards for being a bit of a looker, are they? But
not romantic, maybe would be a more diplomatic way of saying it.
Absolutely stunning. I mean, like, the extra, the functionality they have, and everything else.
Oh, for sure, and the quality of the products they make, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, we had quite.
They kind of everything's hidden behind that sort of black paneling. You can sort of take them. You're like, well, okay, yeah, it's a box, with a tapered lid.
The rum machine.
There is a note to it, and I can't make my mind up whether it's whether it's just because it's got a little bit more heavy alcohol in it or not. I don't know. It is significantly different. I mean, I honestly, when I was chatting to Thomas, I went back and tried it. I just can't. I couldn't believe. No way. This is not you. Where is Tom? What have you done with him? He's been kidnapped, locked in the cellar, something like that. Somebody else is running the distillation facility.
I think, like, one of the things I know when we've tasted different rums before, but it's not just with rum, but it's like when I taste some like agave products and things like that. One of the things that I find the most disappointing is when it is really neutral, when it pretty much is almost vodka-like. And I think, again, this is something we'll see as we're going through. We're not seeing a huge amount of that, which is really nice. And I think that feeds into what you're saying. These are designed for either potentially some maturation later on, but also some mixing. And so it's going to work well. It's got enough power to deal with fruit juices or sweeter mixers and all that kind of thing, which you need, really.
I think honestly, I think that a lot of the producers now have their own style, and things don't taste the same. I think that's quite important. So it's kind of like it's nice to think that you could be picked out in a blind tasting. You go, oh yes, so and so's style or whatever like that. You've got that vibe about it, and it's perhaps potentially you could have like different marks as well. The one that is going to be sold white versus the one that you are intended to lay down for 3 years in virgin oak.
That would make sense, You look at something like whiskey, if you're going to age it for 3 years, 4 years, or if you're going to age it for 20 years, depending on what you're going to do, it's not going to be the same. You don't just use the same spirit all the way around. So, I can see that for sure. And all this character, I guess a lot of people will know, but like this is a big function of the fermentation and a big function of the way that it's distilled, right? These are the two things. But if you muck up that fermentation, you won't necessarily get these interesting things. And I know a lot of the distillers I talk about, they talk a lot about quite a slow fermentation. And it can be difficult to get a warm fermentation, particularly at the moment. You're trying to make rum today. Fermentation.
More investment and that sort of temperature controlled and everything else that's got to go on with it. But actually, long fermentation seems to be the norm these days. And multiple yeast also seems to come up more and more often as well. So like a starter and a finisher, and people saying, "Oh, I'm using a little dunder these days," or something to sort of feedback from the previous run back into it, so you're not wasting and stuff. So I think this is all. It's just kind of it's far more exciting, Kind of like we're going in the right direction. This is very nice. I like.
And you can start to explore it as well. That's quite Sean Smith there saying his rum's fermenting at 33 degrees. Well, exactly. So
sounds quite right.
Not going to get that anytime naturally. Maybe any time in the UK, really.
We did have, I'm not going to name the distillery, but we did have a distillery we went to that was really struggling with its fermentation, but it was in a temperature-controlled environment. The environment was like 16 degrees C or something like that. And you're like, I feel like you might struggle with the fermentation. I think your yeast might struggle a touch there, but you're like, hey, I'm not the fermenter, so there you go. Oh,
there we go.
Avian's not making rum, of course. He's making his Muscovado Spirit down in Cornwall. But maybe next year we'll have a category for that as well.
Yeah. There we go. I've got it on. It's on our table to have a little. We can talk about that as well. It's here to taste. So, right, we'll move on to Two Drifters. You got Two Drifters, Pete?
I have indeed. Yes. And again, this is this one wasn't such a surprise in terms of where they are now. But the very first time, it was a doozy. My first, it was a trip down to Cornwall a couple of years ago. Went to Two Drifters first, and then popped in to say hi to Avian, and on to the Cornish Distillers as well. So I had a great tour. But that first trip into Two Drifters, again, they were making a very clean, verging on neutral kind of spirit. And then, kind of when it come around, we actually like try it again. It's like this is something else again. These guys have got the best stills. I mean, they about the technicality of the ice still. These guys at Two Drifters got these little things called hillbilly stills, which do look like jerry cans with a bit of piping sticking out the side of it. I mean, like they look, quite frankly, like what, really? You get rum off this?
Evening to Dave. And I think it's worth saying as well, one of the big things that Two Drifters are really keen on is the sustainability of their distilling, their carbon negative production. And actually, if you have a look at the Crafty YouTube channel, you'll be able to see the sustainable distilling panel discussion that went on there, which was some good tips on there for sure.
Absolutely. So, these guys are say being carbon negative, I think is quite an achievement. Not just carbon neutral, taking it that extra step further. So, and you know what? I mean, probably worth shouting out to them. And that they just before Christmas did some crowdfunding, obviously with a view to investing and growing the company. I think they raised the money in like 150,000 or something like that. I think they raised it in like a week or something. You know, like just whether that surprised them or not, I'm not sure. But it's one of those things where they've got enough attention from the kind of the sustainability standpoint. The product's great. Yep. They've done a good job
the most
locally. You know, they're really in all the bars and pubs all around Exeter,
and they're lovely folk. Also, which is always nice.
and the boost is good. I think is the important. It's kind of like like that, again, as a company that's on the up, you know.
So it's 40% and it's 100% molasses. This one.
I do love what they're doing down there in terms of they were making beer and then decided that actually the beer was too hard work to kind of like compete and everything else, and the rum was doing really better. So they've actually changed this huge beer fermenter they've got and turned that into the spirit still. So they sort of run it through that and then finish it in the little hillbilly stills. And it's like, wow, it's fantastic. You know, it really is. And you look at it, a most unlikely thing, but again, technical sort of chap who's kind of got in there and worked it all out and quite happy with it.
There you go.
It's not. I don't think they're quite up to receiving visitors, just on guided tours, but it is well worth seeing look at the website and seeing the setup.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, good stuff on that. I think in terms of like the flavour in that on this one, I'm getting to me, like it feels like almost like a slightly darker sort of flavour. I'm getting more like reminds me a little bit like treacle toffees, licorice toffees kind of thing.
Creamy palate.
But there's a coziness to it, a comfiness to it as well.
And the obvious thing, the first three spirits that we've had have all been full-bodied enough that actually heat, or like the first thing you don't think of is alcohol. You're not going, oh, it's hot, and you would get this with a more neutral spirit, possibly something that you'd get, more mass market. Wouldn't be something that you would choose to drink neat. Whereas this is perfectly decent, without even thinking about it. I'm not, we're not being scorched by some high proof ethanol.
But there's a warmth there, but it's no burn. Hello to Salvatore, nice to see you. He's not that far away, but it doesn't matter how far you are at the moment, Salvatore. Not going anywhere. Right. Did you have you got Wrecking Coast? You got it there? You got the sample, or shall I give you a moment to try and find it?
It could be complicated.
All right. We'll move on to the next one. We'll come back to it. All right. He's got a box. He's rummaging through it.
Samples on the floor. There we go.
Now you're seeing there you go. There's the wizard behind the curtain.
So what? Wrecking Coast. Good opportunity to talk about Wrecking Coast. Where is it?
Yeah. 10, I think it was.
10.
We, of course, had various issues because of delays, because of COVID and all that sort of thing. So I
can see number 10 on your list.
Oh, okay. Well, I've written it on the back of the bottle, Pete, so I know it's 10. Can you talk about it and I'll taste it? Is that all right?
I think so. I think the thing we would say about Wrecking Coast.
Here we go. By the way,
here is that when we were down there, that it was sort of trying different things, and liked working with the Muscovado spirit, Muscovado sugar was making a fermentation from that. But immediately, obviously, that was the immediate thing is it's not rum. We've got this thing where rum is molasses or sugarcane juice or a syrup made from the juice. That constitutes what you can make rum from. It's got to come from from sugarcane. So sugar beet isn't, whatever, doesn't matter what you do with it. Sugar beet can't make rum. That's all there is to it. But I suppose what we've got is, if it is, there's an attraction in the world. The molasses that maybe is coming in, or something is not. Maybe it's not sweet enough, or we don't have sugar. We'll add some sugar to it, or we hear this in a number of distillers around the place. And so I've heard some people adding refined sugar to it. Well, I think that fundamentally, I'm a little bit more. I'm a little more inclusive these days than maybe perhaps I was, but we have to have a connection to the source. So if there is no opportunity for the organoleptic sort of properties of the source to come through, like sugarcane, then that's like the primary guide on it. So you couldn't make rum from a refined sugar. And Muscovado, I know that Avian took great care talking to sort of trading standards and everything, and that's why they call it a Muscovado spirit. They like what they've made.
Rightly so.
But it isn't rum, and so let's not try and mislead. And I think this is a really, really important thing, because that actually sort of shows a company that cares about educating people. There's too much of the thing where, like especially in the flavored side of things, where people are trying to market themselves as a rum when they're not, because they've been flavored. So fundamentally, they're not a rum. But the world of rum is complicated enough as it is, without without sort of misleading the client, as it were, or the customer, with odd statements.
I think
find that, mate. I'm going to struggle to find that one, I think.
Okay, well, don't worry. I mean, certainly, like
multiple layers
in the glass, having a nose of it, you can kind of it's got that. There's a parallel for sure, but it was also something that it's its own thing. So I can totally see why, if you've embraced this, if you've been experimenting with it, why this is, the sort of spirit that you fell in love with that you want to release, because it's different notes on the nose. It is very sort of dry fruit, kind of cut apple kind of thing. I was amused slightly anyway, but I think fair play, again, part of the transparency. Even on the tasting notes on the nose, it talks about a sweet acetone, and I thought, it's an unusual note for someone to have, sweet acetone. But you know what? It's kind of there, and
not in a bad way.
Not a problem with it.
So obviously, Avian's the eye still chap as far as the UK is concerned, and honestly, it was a very fun hour or so spent down there, to the point where, like, next time I think I really want to just go down and have a really big breakfast before turning up. And try all the various things. There was so much experimentation going on. It was kind of actually I think it was the visit to his distillery that kind of made me more of a fan of the ice still than I was perhaps beforehand, just because of the versatility of it. But it's like, there was lots of experimentation. That was a few years ago now, 2-3 years ago. But it's kind of interesting to see where they go. I'm hoping that there will be a rum coming from them soon, though, rather than just Muscovado spirit. So I don't think I've got.
But again, one of those things. Certainly in the right drink, I think it's going to be pretty fantastic. So, have you moving on to Winchester?
Winchester, yes. Right, my cross-reference sheet.
So, just for clarification to everyone wondering exactly what's going on, Pete had a big box full of lots of little samples. This is the only way that we could do rum of the year. Yeah, like this. Oh yeah, you had bottles in your larger bottles. So that's why he's got to try and find them. Nothing's got a name on it. He's just got to go by the number.
So I could, now I've got a look-up sheet. I can know what I'm looking for. But it was truly blind judging. We don't know what was in this.
So this is Winchester. This is another 100% molasses rum that we got here. And it's 45%. 45%.
This is the one being made at the Watercress facility.
Yeah,
facility, I think, isn't it? So lots of gin history and everything there. So lots of spirits history at the place, and then moving into rum. A little lighter, but a little sweeter.
Very cleanly distilled, but like quite a nice sort of mouthfeel on that as well. It's a slightly different approach, I think. Like, it's not got that same bombastic characteristic that some of the others have, but there's still those rummy notes sort of coming through. And I think at the 45, it's pretty accessible, actually.
It's 45, isn't it?
Yeah, 45. Like that mouthfeel. really good. And then that nice, like, lingering kind of finish kind of thing.
Again, quite different. Oh, actually, it's got that kind of sort of a tart, citrusy kind of. There's a lot going on there, isn't there?
It has, and like whether it's just my brain and that's just what I'm always kind of I default to, but I'm starting to think like, what would this be like in a dry martini kind of? I'm moving down a little bit more gin. Intriguing to see what it would be like with your tonic that you've got there, Pete.
Well, yeah, now it's open.
Salvatore, yes, that is Paul. It's Twisted Nose. It's the same distillery, Winchester Distillery.
I think again when we visited, they were very much in kind of the sort of development, small batch in comparison to the gin going through. But I think with a view that they anticipated it was going to be popular.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure that it's released yet, because certainly the bottle we've got is a temporary label, so I think it's kind of in the process of getting there. So
that actually got a splash of the Arsene classic London tonic. Really very nice, actually. That is rather lovely.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Then it's got that utility to be mixed and drunk and enjoyed. Right. Shall we do Live next?
Absolutely.
Lovely. So I'll let you lead this one, Pete, because I've been doing too much chatting. You're the rum expert, after all. What's going on?
Do not. You know what?
No one else will do the work. Oh, we'll cruise through. I know.
I'm just giving you a stage to share your competition. Right. So these guys are our friends Matuga Distillers. So they started life. Which one have you got? You got the regular one. I'm drinking the.
Yeah. So you've got the navy and I've got the regular. So, yeah, but that's all right.
Well, 57.5 is a little bit more leery. So Matuga kind of cut their teeth by having contract distilled rum via English Spirit Company, and then decided it was Paul and this is what I kind of, you know what? No, let's start making our own. And so live in Scotland, distillery set up, and they have got the craziest little kind of copper alembics from Portugal with direct flame heating underneath. So in terms of controlling distillation, these guys have got like the temperature or sort of the flow of the water, not even the temperature of the water, the flow of the water through the wormtail tub, and the amount of gas kind of all the gas, and that is it. And you know what? I poured it. I put it on the side. I put the glass over like a 50 centimeters from me. The aroma.
Wow.
So easy.
It really does. So you've got it at 57. Is it 57 you've got it at? And I've got mine at 42.5. But yeah, wow. Really bold, grassy kind of thing going on.
Powerful. I mean, you know what? I mean, I kind of, I think in a competition, I think you've really got to be, I think you've got to be into rum to want something as characterful as this. I haven't got it in my mouth yet. I know, because I am quite familiar with the brand. I love what they do there. Yeah, when we talk about Maillard reactions and things in distillation, this is exactly it, you know. And was up there recently last July, a while ago. But we're going up for the Scottish Rum Festival, which is being hosted by those guys in Livingston. And so we after the event, long day of drinking rum for Scottish Rum Festival, we went down to the distillery and then sort of drank some more rum. But it was Paul is enthusing on the fact that actually only he could make that rum. He could take an apprentice on or something like that, but because there is no measurement or instrumentation, everything's done on taste, aroma, or whatever, and control, that it really is one person. Somebody else would make a different kind of cut. But this is it's such powerful spirit, such powerful rum, that when you put it in, he can't. He says you can't put it into American oak and hope that the American oak will do anything. This rum eats American oak. It's like you've got to put it into to French oak to have a chance to sort of to fight back, as it were, to create an impact.
Yeah, I think it's really quite incredible. At the 42.5, which is what I've got at, it's just full of flavour, and then there's so little alcohol at all. It's incredibly smooth. It's like there's a lot to explore. I think this is. I mean, I've enjoyed all the rums that we've had, but this is like one of the ones where, like, I feel like of the ones we've tried so far, this is probably the one that I think is on its own has a particularly good sippability. I mean, I enjoy any of them neat, but this in particular, I think just that boldness it has. It sounds dreadfully pretentious, so my apologies, but there's something to explore there. So anyway, I feel that's how I feel. I don't care. Call me pretentious.
Just to kind of just to see if it just to see what it's going to be like, and of course it's kind of cloudy because the water's going like, hang on a minute,
what's going on?
Even work. It was like the water's laid on top. It does. So if I was to be critical of what they're trying to do, they've done. If I'm critical for the sake of it, I mean. It relies on a certain sort of spirits drinker to be able to appreciate what they've got. Because if you aren't into it, you're going to really, if you're a novice, you're going to go, Jesus, what the hell have you put in my glass, kind of thing. And to be fair, a lot of the flavored stuff they have, various liqueurs and things they do that are made using this base, and they've done quite well. I think they got into co-op with a lot of their sort of their liqueurs and things, which is really good for a relatively small brand.
Right.
To the point where the problem is they've only got so much capacity. They've got these 4 stills. They've got like 2 spirit stills and a sort of and it's a triple distillation of sorts because there's the middle still and then a finishing still, as it were. But they've only got so much capacity, and so actually Paul wants to be laying down aging stuff, his special editions. But so much of the new make gets called up for the liqueurs that it's what do? You either do one thing or the other. You can't do both, unfortunately, because there's just not enough capacity. But the spirit in the liqueurs is still everything they make is a spirit forward product, and the other flavors on it. We did try some of the next special edition, which I don't know when it will be released, but a very, very special maturation straight from the cask. Wow. Oh my lord, this is good shit. So when how they say Movino, I think was Movino. Pauline, was that it? Who said it? They had their first special edition, their age one, which sold very, very well. The second one will be that on and some, I think. So they honestly, I think it's nice to have a counterpart. So if you put ice still at one end of the scale in terms of all the amazing stuff that it can do. You've got Paul in his alembics at the other end with water temperature that varies, throughout the year. And so water flow and the amount of gas burning is literally the only control he's got. That and his own sense of taste and the nose.
The cuts that he's taken and stuff. Yeah, no, it's
absolutely stunning.
Well, I think it's an interesting, because like even as computerized and as controlled as things can be, there's you're dealing with natural materials and stuff. There's always going to be this slight variation, even to, some of these really big distilleries. It's, where they're doing thousands of litres at a time. It's still all done on nose. It's not like, oh, this is the point. Oh, here we go. That's still a big part of it. So
I think it's worth just saying that actually the reason this is so big is because of the it's not because it's a massive broad cut, but it's not like they've got the tiniest like head and tail bit. It's a sensible clean cut. This is not heavy, dirty alcohol packing this out.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's just full of flavour from fermentation, and it's just a really characterful spirit, but slowly distilled, and with lots of that kind of toasty kind of, so those Maillard reactions really do add something to it. That this is a very characterful spirit as produced, but it's not a dirty. Not horrible spirit.
It's all flavour, no burn. Certainly the 42.5 that I was tasting, it's all flavour, no burn. So
very cool. Very cool. Honestly, I'd be interested to see where they go with that one. Maybe even if Paul puts twice as many stills in, then he's still then got to get. There's only so much that chap can do. He works some very long hours as it is. So he gets an apprentice in. Well, I'm not sure it'll help. Next.
Right, we've got, I think this is one that you've not got, so this will be one that you can talk about and I'll do the taste on, which is the St. Piran's from the English Spirit Distillery.
Yes. I have tried. I just got, for the life of me, I can't find sample number 24. I have, all over the place. But We don't know at this point. Do we know at this point? I mean, at one point there was the rum was being distilled, sort of English spirits company,
All right,
and
so
then being transported
I got some details. I got some details
Yeah.
here. So we've got 100% molasses, fermented and triple distilled in a 200-litre copper pot alembic still at Great Yeldham Hill in Essex.
Yeah, so it's still there, then taken to Cornwall and then brought down to bottle strength in Cornwall. Correct?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm afraid.
You don't know.
But yeah, I think it's the water is that aspect, isn't it?
So this is the thing. I think this is kind of one of the things that kind of creeps up is that sort of notion of providence, which is something that we have got to kind of discuss. Really, I think did we say this last time? I don't know. I haven't done too many of these live streams. I don't know who I was saying it to, but we were talking about.
No, we haven't discussed it.
You know,
I mean, I guess.
Cool. You know, it's nice to be tagged into that kind of thing, you know, but is it a Cornish spirit if it wasn't really distilled there? Or, you know, or if you allude to the fact that it's Cornish, is that fair? These are, you know, these
I think we should do a tasting with the guys. I'm sure they'll be up for it and you can ask them directly. In the scope of the competition, of course, everything's blind tasted. So really the only thing we were interested in was what's the liquid like in the bottle. And so I guess from this point of view and this approach, no one knew what anything was, what the labelling was or anything like that. It was just on what's the liquid like. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think this was a highly commended actually for Rum of the Year.
And I recall it being quite good. So,
and it's more down that sort of fruity, juicy element as opposed to some of those darker sugar notes, and there's not so much of that smoky grassiness. So there's a lightness to it, but there's a fruitiness, succulent, if you will, in that respect.
I think it's fair also to say that whilst what the gentleman at English Spirits, Dr. somebody, Dr. John, yeah. I mean, like I think that you talked a good game previously, but I think over the last few years really has actually improved significantly. So I think the quality of the spirit that's coming out of there is a lot better. Oh
yeah, definitely, and certainly things that I've tried when they just come out and what I'm trying them now and what we tasted in the competition are different to what they were. So it's almost to an extent, if you think you know it because I've tried it before, I tried it 3 or 4 years ago. It's worth revisiting for sure. Absolutely. Because this is definitely one of these places where they constantly trying to improve and increase the quality of stuff, and they're doing well at doing that. Okay, we'll move.
Actually, I think that was remember we featured Old Salt in the English the European rums at Craft Distilling Expo.
We did 5
years ago.
Yeah, 5 maybe longer, 6 years ago, maybe. Yeah, and that was like when they were basically the only people doing rum, and that's
Well, yeah, so exactly. There wasn't much in the way in the UK.
No. So that was one of the highly commended. We'll move to the another one, which is 1968, which is from Portsmouth Distilling, and you've got that there, haven't you?
I have, which was number 17. Excuse me. So this is also, should we say, one of those ones where it kind of what it's made from puts it into a point of discussion, should we say? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think. Well, I'll let you lead some up with that one. As I said, the great basis of everything was what were the what did the liquid taste like and things like that. And I think that there's questions about like what's like in the excuse the pun, like what's in the spirit of what people are trying to do with rum, and then what is like depending on a particular interpretation of a legislation. And make no bones about it, the European legislation on rum is not dissimilar to that in gin, in that there's plenty to argue about, and a lot of it is open to interpretation. And I think that's fair enough. Not everyone will necessarily agree on that, and things get missed. Right? These are not regulations that are written by people that honestly have a great deal of knowing what they're talking about. Certainly the gin stuff. I mean, because they've got all this other stuff they've got to be experts in as well. So that happens. Yeah,
well, there's interest, but there's also things that are never set in stone, so things can change and move on. So I have, so Portsmouth, it's a shame really. They are, I mean, for me, they're just like an hour down the road, and I've not been to their facility yet. I really will, as soon as things get normal, well, hopefully they'll let me in. Depends what I'm going to say in the next 5 minutes, I suppose. No, I've known the guys for a long, long time, so I do like what they do there. And then the botanical stuff we were talking about last week. Yeah. really very good. In your crib sheet, you call this sugarcane juice. Well, it's not.
All of my stuff came from what was entered in the.
Because I don't think, unless they're bringing in fresh juice like really quickly.
No, it's Panella, I think, isn't it?
Evaporated sugarcane. Yeah. So I think this is it. So I mean, a friend of mine in Amsterdam did actually ship in from what's it, Thailand or somewhere around there, actually frozen sugarcane juice for an experiment. But I can't imagine anyone shipping in bulk frozen juice. I mean, that's ridiculous. So in this case, we're talking about rehydrated, evaporated sugarcane.
Exactly.
And you know what? And so this is so they're not the only people doing that. I mean, White Peak, we've talked about previously as well. I've done it, and I thought the White Peak rum was ridiculously good. I mean, I shouldn't call it rum because, again, Panella or Rapadura or whatever you want to call it is not recognised as a source for making rum from. But in terms of being in the spirit of making rum, well, it kind of, for me, it kind of makes sense because it's not a refined product. I'll come back to that point. But like, you've got your fresh juice. Lots of producers around the world, particularly Dominican Republic, Guatemala, places like that, they're always like harvesting the cane, they're crushing the cane, collecting the juice. Well, if you're not distilling immediately, you've got to do something with it. You know, you can't store it; it will go off very quickly. You know, it will ferment very naturally, ferment rapidly, spoil. So what you do is you boil off the water, you make it into a syrup, you raise the Brix level on it, you know, and it becomes shelf stable. You know, I mean, that's why we like molasses, because, you know, it's shelf stable. You can ship it around the world and do stuff, as long as you've got to look after it, obviously. Sean Smith. Yeah. Hello, Sean. And I was going to mention that I've got some aged rum samples sitting just out of just behind the screen. So if you're going to make a syrup, well, then are we going to put a definition on what defines a syrup? Has it got to be within what viscosity range has it got to be in? If you carry on boiling it down to the point where you make something that's solid, well, you know, you've just taken it to the point where it's become a solid. Now, you know, I could say from an engineering point of view, nothing is entirely solid. You know, if it's something, you could put it on the side and leave it for 1,000 years, it's going to move. Everything has creep, you know, as you define in engineering speak, you know. So it's kind of like, you know, so it might be a bit more solid than syrup, but I think it's in the spirit of it. So for me, it's kind of, I'm happy to kind of include Panella, Rapadura, or whatever within the world of rum, because it's an unrefined product. The trouble that people like Tate and Lyle will sort of come back with is that unless you're careful in the sourcing, you might end up with something that has had a degree of refinement about it or whatever. So actually, because there are no regulations, there's no global there's no control over what defines it. So in the case of White Peak, I know particularly they go out to the particular place. They actually go to the source in South America and buy it from there. I don't know where Portsmouth get their stuff from.
It's also from South America. I can't remember exactly, but I know I had a great discussion with them about that, the point that you make, and about the sourcing. And I know that they're particularly focused on making sure they are doing that.
There would be no point. I mean, this is where we sort of talk about Muscovado and things like that. It's kind of like this sort of processing that goes on in the sugar world. Well, you know, where are you picking up that product from? You know, what level of refinement has it gone through to get to it? Now, I think if you're using it for a reason. It's because you want to point a difference to molasses. You want something that retains the characteristics of the sugarcane juice as much as you can possibly get. And you know what? It works. And so I would, if there was if I could sign right now a reg that would allow inclusion thererof, I would, because I think it works. I don't think I see no reason to not include it.
No. Can you give us a couple of nose tasting notes? Because I haven't got any here, but I know people are always interested a little bit in the opinion.
How come you haven't got it? I thought you were a regular supplier.
Because Bernadette's got my bottle. Because we're going to do a more focused one just on Portsmouth with the across the range. So the green note, I think, is something that kind of comes through a little bit for more on this one. There's a real dryness to it as well, actually. Sort of thick, but a real dry finish on there as well. Bernadette, give him the bottle back. But again, like, very easy on the nose. I mean, it's kind of I'm not here to compare it against others, but if you're trying to create an agricole, then it doesn't smell like an agricole. It's more closer to some of these other ones we've had this evening. Have still got a cold.
I don't think it's affecting the delivery of it, but it gives a different note. So it doesn't have. So it offers something different. I think that's the whole point of using it.
Yeah, for sure, and that's it. And I think like that one, in addition to Bernie's got our own bowl. Then I should have kept it. Thanks, Bernie. But yeah, it does. It has its own character that's different from these things. There is there's I always get sometimes. I know some people like when there's an aspect to the nose that is almost moving towards some of those green notes that you might get in an agave spirit, which is quite interesting, I think, and that's part of the function of their fermentation and all that.
Peppery kind of finish, the way you might expect from agaves there. I say it has a lovely sweet sort of roll onto the palate, but then it dries out. Not astringent, it's not quite the right word, but as that almost like this could be an aged product as well, to be fair. Very cool, very good. I actually genuinely very nice. But the way I remember trying this again a few years ago when they first started, it's not the way that I recall it tasting now. Now I know that my palate changes, but I feel like the product has developed and sort of moved on a bit.
I think that's true of most rums.
I think it was a little coarser to start with, and it feels a little more refined these days.
Well, it was highly commended, so of course it's going to be refined. And their aged product, I know Bernie and I had a little taste of one of them about, I can't remember what it was, 18 months, something like that, is due to come out 2022, I saw when I was looking at their website.
Very nice.
But we'll also do a bit more of an in-depth, and we can talk about this, because it's an interesting topic, I think, and I think the guys are interested to talk about it, so we'll do another session at some point, a bit more focused on that. And then our last one, which was our...
They do lots of other products as well, obviously. So
the gins. Our last one is, and a cracking cider, I must say.
Honestly, I really need to try this cider. You enthuse about that cider. So
I know, you talk about it a lot. We'll finish with our winner of for the unaged rum, which is the Opus from the unconventional unconventional spirit, unconventional distillery here. There you go. Sorry, mucking it all up there. There we go. There you go. Opus. This is a weighty 63% ABV, and it is made with UK molasses. Do you have much of a thought on?
Oh, that's right. Well, that was the molasses they sourced, but it's from the refining. Unrefined bought in, finished refining, the molasses comes from there. That was that's the thing, because there does seem to be like some interesting discussion about that aspect and the role of the preservation of molasses if they've all been refined overseas and all that kind of thing, which is a seem to have watched number 20. Oh, there it is. No, right there. That's handy. For some reason, this is the 20 on the table. So this was it was interesting that our conversation online the other day about the winner sort of spurred a UK sort of prolific rum reviewer to consider it. 3.5 out of 5 he gave it.
Well, there you go. Well, that's why we have a panel, not just one person, right?
We have, but it's interesting. I think it.
But get in touch if you want interested for next year. I mean,
well, yeah.
You get the Peaty Boy seal of approval.
No, he obviously is prolific in his reviewing. But it's interesting that I think that it's good to have these conversations because it kind of gets products out there and maybe talking about things it accelerates it in front of people. This evening, based on the day that I've had and everything else, you kind of go like, your palate at the end of the day is so jaded is not quite the right word, but it's affected by all the things you've done throughout the day,
of course,
your mental state and everything else. I've not been upset with anything I've drunk tonight. I think it would be.
Good. I know you can be quite picky as well, to be honest, Pete. So I'm pleased. I think a big part of the reason why it did do so well, might recall from what the judges had said, and as I discussed in other videos, we had quite a range of different judges, from people that were more sort of into application of it as a mixed drink to people that knew a lot about the distilling side to people that were just great fans of rum. Because I think, as I said before, and I'm sure I will say again, no rum distillery is going to make their money off the fact that you and I really like the rum, Pete.
Yeah, exactly.
As much as it pains my ego.
Yeah, what he really needs to do is happen in the cases, like regularly.
Right. Exactly. Cider, maybe. I know, sorry. But
oh, please, I'm going to have to get some cider.
But one of the things that they really liked was the complexity of the profile and the flavour, and the lack of heat, really, particularly given that it was 63%. Because with some products, when they're at a really high ABV, that character can be quite kind of tight and closed up. But you are getting that at 63, very drinkable, with a nicely balanced flavour profile with complexity there as well. But you have to be careful when you're drinking it, I think. It's lovely.
It's actually the persistence is just wonderful. I mean, honestly, a couple of sips, you've got an absolute mouthful of flavour. Yeah. Yum, 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 yum.
I'd be interested to have, and we should have more of a conversation because, of course, Unconventional did the Pioneer, that pink rum that we had last time as well. So they're definitely doing some really interesting, funnily enough, unconventional kind of things. But I'd be fascinated to know what this would be like at a 46% or something like that. But it's not just as easy as me sticking water in it because you gotta if you're proofing down from 63 to 46, you can't just chuck water in it. You need to do it to do it properly in quite a slow process.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've just dumped a bunch in,
yeah, I mean, you can get something, but it's not the same. But I mean, if nothing else, bottling it at 63%, your yield is going to be a lot less as well, apart from all the tax and stuff that you've got to pay.
I don't think I did kind of kill it. I think with but it was that balance, that 63% ABV spirit. And the way that it delivered the flavour, the kind of there wasn't a heat to it.
No.
I mean, it was warming potentially.
Warming, but no real heat. And it wasn't just. I mean, it wasn't just that. And I must say, it was. I think, as I said before, the standard was really high. Evidently, because we tasted through a load of the products that entered, and they've been fantastic. So it was also quite tricky. But this was kind of like one of the things that. And as I think I said before, our judges seem to quite like high ABV stuff.
So it's because you just employ a bunch of booze hounds. That's the trouble, isn't it?
Employ, yeah, they didn't get paid.
Well, there is that, I suppose. Yeah. I kind of feel like I'm a little bit. I'm just going to go back to number 17. I think actually. But very, very.
As we're wrapping up, did anyone have any questions? Because it's lovely to have all these people here, but no one's really asked anything. I'm quite surprised.
I'm here for just to listen to you rabbit on, mate. That's the thing.
Oh, well, objective achieved.
Knowledgeable eye candy, mate. That's what you are. I think we've got, honestly, I think a few years ago there would have been a great deal of similarity across. That's 6 rums that are really quite different, I think, in style. There's sufficient variation in flavour that it means that everyone can kind of you'll find somebody who becomes a fan of, or somebody who won't care for it so much. But it's it's nice to provoke a reaction. Having that kind of that's the worst thing that you can say. It's like, I don't like it or I love it. Kind of much better to kind of that would be a terrible thing. You spent all your heart and soul pouring it into making a bottle of something, and okay, you failed completely. So these kind of I don't think they're necessarily going to be. They might be a little bit for some people out there. We've got enough people in the world that kind of like a light, almost flavourless kind of spirit, and they drown it in their mixer, and that's kind of where they're at. These are for all of these are for people that like a spirit. And you're going to want it present in your cocktail. I absolutely would love some of these in cocktails. And I kind of actually say that gin style of cocktail kind of feels appropriate, But or typical gin cocktails, but honestly, really, really good. A couple of these do feel like they really want to be stuck in a barrel and just kind of left.
And just to see, just to play around and see, and where we go. I know, I don't know if he's watching, but I know a friend of mine, Stuart. If you're watching, if he's not watching now, we'll be watching later. He took it upon himself for Trafalgar Night to put a selection. I think it was he has a small cask that he's kind of conditioned with. I think it was conditioned with port or something, and he put some of the 1968. He can't wait for 2022, you see, so he put some of the Portsmouth rum in there. Well, he works in Portsmouth, so he likes that sort of thing. And we had it over over the Trafalgar Night. Well, it was combination Trafalgar Night, pickle night, dinner. It was delightful. I sent you a picture. I know you're dreadfully jealous.
Well, I have to say I was more horrified by the in that. I didn't quite get the whole picture of it. We're like, yeah, okay, that makes a little bit more sense now. Avian, you're gonna need to expand on that one, chap. We've missed our 1 hour opportunity for saving out and put it on Instagram, so we may as well just think. So, Avian, on the subject of raw materials, what are your thoughts on desiccated molasses or the newly developed free flow molasses? So, okay, this is something. Can we invite Avian in? Do you think?
I don't know if there's some facility to do it. You can send him a bit. Is he ready? Avian, are you dressed?
Avian, are you dressed? Would you like to bring this to the table? Would be really good. I think it'd be cool. I can. Let me. What I'll do. Bear with me 2 minutes. We literally, if we'd just finished wrapping like 5 minutes ago, we could have saved it out and done that. But I think we'll just carry on now. Let me just get a copy.
Everyone's leaving Instagram anyway, Pete. I mean, so David Attenborough's not there on there anymore. Who cares?
It's for trendy folks, isn't it? From the waist up. Yeah. Well, I'm wearing my PJ, so it feels like more like a bedtime story, this, doesn't it, than anything else? I'm gonna. I don't know quite. I'm gonna get it to you, but I'm gonna message it to you. I think would be the best way. Then maybe you could tell us what that actually means, because in terms of terminology, I don't know what that means. So I don't mind admitting my weaknesses.
I think that does seem to be like where we are with rum, and I think we touched on it very briefly, but it's not the easiest spirit to make in the UK. Like those people that are, as much as I love gin and all the gin producers and stuff, those people that are making rum, like they've decided to go down a different path, and it is a much harder path, not just from a licensing point of view, but from a capital point of view, the space that you need as well. I mean, you can't just like stick it in a shed in the garden kind of thing. You can't do that. But we have limitations, and a lot of that is mostly due to our climate. And so it's not perhaps surprising that people are looking at, well, what can I do to take a different approach? And I think, as I said before, but I think it's important to kind of underline, both for a competition like this and also like when you're judging in the US, because I see like quite a similarity between the two, that you can't judge it from a point of view that, oh, well, I'll compare this to something that's made, in the Caribbean or in some warmer climate where, sugarcane grows or whatever, there's more access to these things. So it's not surprising that maybe there's other processes that go on.
Right, let's welcome. We're going rogue now. Yeah.
Giddy up.
Thank you for getting dressed.
As I said, from the waist up, I need 12-year-olds to help me with the technology.
Something like that. Good to see you, chap. Happy New Year.
And to you as well. Good to see you again, David.
Hey, good to see you, man.
So I think, all right, I don't mind admitting, I've not heard the term desiccated molasses or free flow molasses. It's a point you were saying in there, but I would be interested to know what that actually means. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, when we first met those years ago, when we were still doing ferments in buckets and trying to work out training and what was going on, I think one of the hardest things, obviously from a distiller's point of view, is sourcing materials that really come from where they say they come from when you're buying in from the industry's point of view, very, very small quantities. the sort of things we've seen cropping up are, without naming names, there are probably 2 or 3 companies at wholesale level which will sell, different grades of molasses from candy right the way to blackstrap, different sugars, it's bagged, it's all sorts of things. But obviously they're coming from one of my favorite company named Ragus, which took me a long time to realize is just sugar written backwards.
Wonderful.
And I think there's a big crossover, because obviously rum in the UK is still very small, it's very niche, and I think there's huge amounts of energy and work going into it, which is fabulous to see. But obviously most of the sugar production coming into the UK is aimed very much at the baking and the food processing industry. Yeah. So molasses is a horrible product to work with at small scale. It's sticky, it's gloopy, it's difficult to pour. So there are lots of different products coming in, probably for the catering trade, that are starting to move across. And they do look, if I put my production head on, if I had the choice of 150 25 kilo plastic tubs of molasses, or a free flow hopper of these granulated molasses pellets, you can kind of think in some ways, from practicality point of view, which way you'd want to go. But I was just wondering that there's obviously a lot of change, a lot of adulteration to it, a lot of extra refining, and purely within the EU descriptor, which, Peter, you were very helpful setting us on the right path with that, to really put your stick in the ground and say, that's what the rule says, that's what we're going to do. And I think across the whole of the craft spirits industry, that really needs to be our standard that we bear, is to say, look, we're doing it properly and this is how we want it to run. But how do these products come in? I've spoken, completely not naming names, but I've spoken to people who struggle with the fermentation. They're adding a bit of refined sugar or a bit of dark sugar to try and get that ferment to go. And at what point, where's the line drawn?
Yeah, well, I to be fair, I kind of alluded, one of the ones we tried this evening what had been adding sugar to that fermentation, but the one I was trying at the time, I have to say, was very much development, and they were struggling against temperature. And I go, well, I think first and foremost in fermentation, you if it's not 32 or in that sort of ilk, well then you haven't really got a fermentation anyway. So you get your temperature right, and then probably everything else will follow. But it's this idea, so I understand. So free flowing and desiccated, that makes absolutely makes a lot of sense, because handling, I've seen down at Circumstance Distillery, a lot of molasses all over the floor. It's awful. I can't imagine what it's like to clean that up. That'd be horrible.
You almost want to just set fire to the distillery and buy a new one. In the middle of the summer, you leave the building late at night and you're covered in wasps.
Oh, yeah. And I thought just not being able to move once you'd been standing there for a bit was bad enough.
Honestly, everything sticks to everything. It's foul stuff to work with.
So I think I would say, if the point about the sort of the regulation of probably needs a little bit more refinement thereof, or a little bit of clarification. So I honestly think that here in the UK, we probably have as of what day are we? 13th. So 13 days ago, we had a wonderful break point where we could actually kind of define our own UK specification on rum, particularly. I know that they're making big steps in Scotland to do this. The Scottish Rum Producers Association is a thing. Whether they've got to producing a manual yet or not, I'm not sure. But it's kind of like, it's about offering guidance on all kinds of things. So like, if you're going to call yourself rum, well, these are the things that you need to adhere to in order to do that, and if you're going to call yourself Scottish rum, well then very much so, you can't be just bringing in spirit from bulk and whatever and then bottling it and calling it Scottish. That's not enough, just adding water isn't enough. But it's that idea of refinement is important. So desiccated, if they're taking molasses and then just heating it further to a brick and then breaking it up, well, okay, then that's what have you done further? Well, molasses, in my mind, is like molasses is already heavily processed. Through the sugar making production. A little further probably won't do it any harm. But in the case of sort of putting a specification on the Rapadura, you're allowed to do this. But if you do, and I don't know, I'm not going to claim to have looked into all the different ones. But if you look all around the world, anywhere where sugarcane is grown, people are making an unrefined sugar from the juice all around the world. It's like, well, what is it? Are there some areas that maybe say, well, these guys are doing something that actually then takes it beyond the pale? So it's something I think we should agree here in the UK. People in the Caribbean or in areas where sugarcane's grown don't have this impetus. So I'd like to say, I'm saying this deliberately because I know Gail was on the thread. Like Richard Seal doesn't have this problem. He's never going to consider Rapadura as a problem in Barbados. He has his own. They have molasses, Barbados molasses. They have imported molasses. He's crushing his own cane. Why would he worry about evaporated cane juice? It's not going to be his thing. But of course, here or Europe, Northern Europe, or extremities of north and south in the world, well, it is a little bit more of an imperative. It'd be nice to use molasses. But people look for a point of difference, don't they? That's Portsmouth, White Peak. I think that the stuff, particularly from White Peak, when it came out, was fantastic. I was blown away by just how good it was as a spirit. It's interesting in the thread that and the subsequent conversation I actually had with Max, that they're looking to use some molasses within their fermentation now because they think it's better for aging. So the balance of further experimentation, actually, that they get a better aged product from using molasses.
Yes.
Interesting. That genuinely, that's interesting. You're only going to find that out by playing, aren't you? And having a bit of a go. But
I think you're absolutely right, Pete. You've been down to see us. We played with sort of molasses, different various brown sugars, panela mixes, and they really do. They bring fantastic variances of flavors. And for me anyway, to be able to bring a little bit of the grassiness of an agricole to the grunt of a really dark blackstrap molasses rum and add a little bit of sweetness from a brown sugar, that to me is a real point of being able to be creative. But I think with UK rums still in their infancy, it would be wrong, I think, to cloud it in some ways as the gin market has become by calling them all rum and completely, the risk is you poison the well before it's really got started.
For me, it's a very complicated category that we operate in anyway. I think there's lots of things about it that can be misunderstood. And I say, and I think exactly trying to mislead people from the get-go is a real problem. We're all just trying to get into this. There's lots of people coming to rum for the first time. You can see it on all the forums. So I really would like some sort of standard or some sort of definition for UK rum production. I think that would be, if that's something we could do this year, if we could get a bunch of people together to kind of nail that those sort of standard, that would be really, really useful, I think. And at least, as in the sort of that idea of guidelines, because some people are going to be coming to market taking the piss because they just want to take advantage of a boom. That happens everywhere. Anything that's popular, people are going to jump in and they are going to just bend it. So the problem I suppose we have is, is like anywhere else, is going to be regulation and enforcement of said regulation. It's you could make it from sugar beet, slap rum on the label, and what's the process to it takes people to complain about it to then trading standards to take action. Otherwise they won't, because they probably got 6 million other
trading standards have got to deal with all the other problems, right? It's not just spirits they got to deal with, but everything else. It's only, I think, it's been a long-standing problem with gin, and it's only recently that the Gin Guild, which would be a vessel for such a thing from a gin point of view, has actually got somewhere with trading standards where they can actually work to. It's not just flavour stuff. You've got the non-alcoholic stuff's going to come as well. You've got to deal with that as well.
Non-alcoholic rum. Oh, get the fuck out of it. But at least
it hasn't been the stage we had with gin 2 years ago, where there was gin-flavoured ice cream for dogs. When it gets to that stage, you can only go up from there.
I think, just to put a context to trading standards, like from the point of view, I think rum in the UK, I think you could probably add up the number of casks that contain rum in the UK, and if it's anywhere near 100 casks, I'll be surprised. It's kind of like, but in terms of whiskey, yes, there'll be like, there are things that are a lot bigger volume. Rum is ramp. I mean, honestly, the number of companies that are involved with rum in the UK is going up and up and up. I mean, we talked about unconventional. I still haven't had a chance to look into them properly, but they entered this competition. I hadn't even heard of them. I'm looking at it going like, God damn it. Like, I thought I was keeping on top of like rum companies in the UK. I didn't even hear of this crowd turning up, but it's and this is only going to, we're only going to continue to expand as well. I mean, like, I think a lot of companies sort of held off during lockdown going like, oh, we'll see what's happening. But then eventually I'm like, no, can't wait any longer. Just going to push on. And like, since Christmas, there's been a bunch, turning, more in my inbox, So, yes. So we need something. I think we need a little bit of self-regulation to take a bit of a hand, not be an arsehole about it, to be kind of inclusive where we can be, but to actually to help protect the consumer. I
completely agree with that, and I think I hate to see. I'm speaking to some people in Tasmania. The Tasmania Whisky Association was set up, and there was a big risk there that there was a pulling the ladder up behind them exercise going on. Yeah. And I'd hate to see something like that happen in the UK, because I see so much creativity and some really good people coming to the fore and chancing their arm. Because let's face it, anyone setting up a craft distillery should never have the word money in their head. It's the old American adage: the only way to make $1 million out of distilling is to spend $2. But I'd hate to see that creativity. Yeah, I'd hate to see that creativity stifled. But I think it would be really, really useful to have some sort of mechanism within, craft distilling as a whole. I know, Peter, without going into it, you touched on the whole Cornish thing a while ago, and that frustrates us locally. That the lorry delivering it swerves over the Tamar Bridge and back up to London, and they call it Cornish. And I think the same with rum. There's an awful lot of stuff out there that, whilst rum is in the ascendancy and hopefully becomes more and more mainstream and quite fashionable, you're never going to stop the chances coming in and having 1% rum and 100% sugar and slapping a pirate label on the front and selling it hand over fist. That'll always happen. But it's trying to give the people who are, like you said, out of those 100 casks you suggest are possibly laid down in the UK. Well, we've got 2. That's all we've managed in a couple of years. But it's giving those people some kind of a future to say, well, actually, if I'm going to go through the heartache now and the expense of it, put it down for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, I'd like to think that the craft industry still has some credibility when we get to that point. And it hasn't gone the way of, if you look back historically at some of the overseas wine industries, where everybody piled in and any old rubbish was being shipped out with a label slapped on it, and that confidence goes.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the worst thing is, I think gin has come through it. I think gin has branched off. You've got people who appreciate craft gin and people who like drinking sugary alcohol because they like the idea of gin but don't like gin, and that's fine, and that's healthy for the industry. But the same sort of thing with rum, and if there is an English whiskey market, whatever, but just so craft distilling isn't kind of scooped up with this disreputable, anyone with a garden shed and a mixing paddle can come out with a spirit. Sorry, that's
you got a 25 litre still, and and you're making like 100 cases of spirit a week, kind of. It's kind of like, what are you battling it with, mate? What are you stretching it with, kind of approach. Yeah, this is. I think honestly, I think that's it. Rum has a bad image. In some respects, because it's sort of seen as a bit of a, in some parts it's seen a bit of a joke, and so it's kind of like I'm a little bit more protective of. I know rum is amazing. I mean, everything we've tried tonight has been delish. It really is very good. The more I drink, the more I like it, obviously. But but it takes a little understanding to appreciate what this is. I've done rum clubs, and you sit there and you put rum, and people look you in the eye, and they're trying not to upset you because they think they're gonna, because they don't like what it is, because it's a bit big for them. they're not quite ready for it. That's okay, it's good. But this is rum. This is what rum really is. We're making some good stuff here in the UK. Let's not burst the bubble by having too many jokers or people, quite frankly, like I say, making stuff that just isn't rum. Completely isn't, so we've got a big year ahead of us. I think we really need to grab this one, and we can do this in conjunction with Craft Distilling Expo and wider forums. It's going to get people in. It doesn't have to be I do these moments where I invited you in. I know that you are a producer of rum. I've never made. I've not distilled anything. I just drink it. So I kind of my opinion only goes so far. So we need people of all ilk to come in, but the competition is also that we've just done had equally. David was at pains to get people that are not necessarily even technically minded about rum, just rum drinkers involved, because I think all of them.
If as a distiller, if we were trying to sell to other knowledgeable distillers, we'd forget it.
You don't make it how we make it, so we're not interested.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So just where are you with your rum? We've got you on the screen. You've got 2 casks laid down.
Yeah, we've got 2 casks.
Muscovado, or is it actually rum?
No, we've got 1 Muscovado and 2 100% molasses base.
Very cool. Very cool.
So they're down. We found, obviously, funnily enough, we found a little bit of time just before Christmas year before last. So they're coming up 14 months in cask, one of them 12 in the other. So a little bit of time to go on that. And we're hoping to fit in a couple more distillations this year based on what we learned from how they're maturing, looking at different cask options for them, maybe a bit of different finish. And we're getting some really good support from some of the guys up in the London cocktail crowd, just giving us a bit of guidance. And I'm sure we all know who we're talking about, but there are a few out there who, if it's rubbish, they'll tell you.
It's actually quite nice to. I think for me, it's
yeah, absolutely. There's no point.
It's good to be honest. I think you just got to. Because it means in a few years' time we'll be drinking better stuff,
Exactly, and I'd rather find out that it's not very good now when it's only been sort of in a barrel for a year than to big fanfare in 5 years' time, and it's still rubbish.
We're all like looking at our boots, going like, "Well, are you going to tell it?" Oh, cool, very cool. Honestly, I want to get down. I want to come and see you guys again. Anyway, I've been anxious to get down to Cornwall. It's so trendy. Goddamn, Cornwall's so trendy. Oh,
absolutely, absolutely. Well, make sure you don't just swerve the wheels over the Tamar Bridge. Do come down. You're both of you. You're always welcome.
Absolutely.
We've been doing a few other mad distillations, so the back cupboard is well stocked, and we'll arrange a driver this time, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, Rebecca's a lot bigger this time, so we might need a crush as well. So, awesome, right? That was lovely. Thank you very much for jumping in. And,
thanks for dropping me in there, guys. Really
of course, we have invited 2-3 other people in there as well. We have got an email there from Jonathan about the Cornish geothermal distillery. I think there's an awful lot there, but I don't think they're quite in the position where they know exactly. I think that on paper it seems like a very, very good idea. The Cornish geothermal distillery, from a sustainability point of view, makes absolute sense. I don't think there are any kind of point yet where they're even close to making anything. So
exciting to see how it goes, though, for sure.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah,
so.
We've had a couple of discussions with them. I think the maturation side of it is fascinating. We're starting. We'd love to get a couple of barrels in there. Obviously, to get that, try and mimic a bit more realistic maturation. They're certainly a long way off actually sort of breaking ground and doing something. But overall, it's a really interesting idea they've got.
It's a sign of the future. I think there's a lot of interest and a lot of people willing to invest a lot of money in it in the future.
I think it's a key thing that you just talked about there is like already, like you're in discussion with them, you're encouraging them. That I think it's something that has served, and I chat about it so much, but served gin very well to have like people encourage each other, because to a large extent, like a lot of these different distilleries, you're not necessarily directly in competition with each other because you're kind of, it's a local market, and okay, there might be some bits, but a lot of it's so locally focused. And also, as we've said today, all of these spirits have tasted totally different. So some people will taste them and they're like, I really like this one, I don't really like this one. It is what it's expected. So I think it's really important to build everyone up and encourage them than the opposite. And there's a question from Salvatore, of which I have no idea about the answer. I guess, what is the country closest to Europe that grows?
The sugar cane grown in the south of Spain, down in Motril area. They're growing cane down there, mostly as a specialist crop for rather than sort of for sugar production. But obviously Madeira, growing sugar cane, Canary Islands, and all round through there. But sugar cane, south of Europe is a thing. It's possible. Trouble is, you still couldn't ship it. I mean, like a lot of people bring sugar cane in chilled containers from Jamaica and places like that. But still, you imagine the volume you'd have to bring in to be able to make rum from it.
That's it.
I think one container makes like a few buckets of juice. It's like, no, I don't think, not worth it.
I think that's interesting. I mean, I think I'm right in saying that actually sugarcane was originally grown in the Canaries. It's a wild plant there. Was
before it moved through to there before it went to the New World.
I think the most local one to Western Europe is, I have heard fairly well substantiated rumours that there's a couple of guys on the Scilly Isles trying to grow sugarcane under plastic. Yeah,
again, it'd be interesting to know how much they can grow. But again, they would use part of that crop with molasses because they couldn't grow enough. But you can imagine making a small amount of sugarcane spirit and a larger amount of molasses spirit, and then it's a blender. You lay them down as separate items, and a little bit of this just lifts the whole thing. So, they're doing a bit there, but I think it's not very much.
Well, the Scilly probably aren't big enough to even grow enough.
I mean, you need a lot. Unfortunately, you need a lot of cane to get a bottle of rum. But it's a thing though. It'd be really cool if they do.
Yeah, definitely.
Genuinely, it'd be really cool. It'd be a thing, wouldn't it? I'll have some genuine Scilly rum. If I apologise to anyone who's listening, if the influence was that all sugarcane juice rum is agricole, then obviously that's not the case. But it is an easy catch-all to kind of like to apply. It's that kind of tasting, that flavour note, that tasting note kind of thing. But there you go. Cool. That's my disclaimer for the night. I don't know what else I've probably said a million other things. Cool. That was awesome. I enjoyed that.
All right.
Can't do it next week. It's my birthday. The week after, I'm doing a rum club on Wednesday, but we could do it on a different night if you fancy.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll work something out.
We'll sort something out.
Well, thanks everyone for watching.
Cheers. I'm going to end the broadcast. You don't have to, for those there, you don't have to leave the broadcast studio though. So, cheers.